those. And so for me, I would say in a similar school of thought to people like Safety and Amoose, Pierre Richard, Vijay Boyapati, Michael Goldstein. I'm from a similar, to some extent, I'm known as interviewing from that perspective.
Okay, cool.
But also conducting more of a technological interview style as well around specific technical components of Bitcoin.
Great. Well, let's have at it. Do you have anything you'd like to talk about in particular? Do you know who I am? Do you know of me? Should I introduce myself?
Yeah, no, I do know of you, Richard. Right. I think you're one of those guys who's like, obviously you're quite intelligent and you've got a good way of speaking and so on. But I guess I do have a bit of a concern around this whole Bitcoin hex thing.
Great.
I think it just leads people the wrong way. It tells people, oh, hey, we can create this new money, and
this is going to be an awesome conversation. I can feel it. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to discuss back and forth.
Yes, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yes, we can create money out of thin air. Continue.
Yeah, so I just see it like, what is even the point of this? Is it just kind of giving people the wrong idea of, oh, hey, we can try to create a coin that's intentionally meant to pump or whatever? Mm-hmm.
I'll try something.
Yeah, sure.
I'll try something different, right? My audience has already seen me say the same things a lot, and so I'd like to let them hear me say new things. So I'm going to try and say new things with you, and we'll try this more of a Socratic questioning and interrogative type of interaction where I elicit your worldview and your values and beliefs, and then see if, in fact, mine kind of fits into yours and we just didn't realize it, and that we actually have, synergy and such. So, why do you like Bitcoin?
Fundamentally, it represents a game changer technology. It mm-hmm. represents the ability to create hard money, right? Money that's hard to create, mm-hmm. that is outside the purview of any government or any company or any person, while at the same time being programmable and able, the ability to be sent anywhere. I think another key component that I really like about Bitcoin and why I view it like a very game changer level technology is that people can cheaply verify it. So you can run a Raspberry Pi full node, the parts for which will cost you maybe $200 or $300, and you can now verify the full supply, mm-hmm. et cetera, as I'm sure you're aware. And so to me, that just represents a real change in the way that money could be created and operated. And I would contrast that with gold, right? So gold, for a long time, for thousands of years, was money. However, it got centralized, and that is how it got co-opted by the government. And that is how I would say gold got demonetized.
So let me jump in, because so I agree with almost everything that you've said. There's certain caveats that I would insert in there. I guess since you're a podcaster and used to going in depth, I will go in depth with you at this point. So I agree with you that a technology that can truly change the relationship of man and government is huge, gigantic thing. And there really aren't that many of those technologies out there that you could participate in. And the fact that you could participate in it and get rich at the same time is just even better, right? As far as verifying the whole supply and running a full node, in fact, running a full node is meaningless unless you trust who you downloaded it from. And so in reality, all blockchains are socially enforced networks. And you downloading a client that you think is a full node and you think is doing things better than a soft client or a thin client, that's only true if the person that gave it to you didn't malware it and just take all your keys, right? And so unless you're actually a developer reviewing the code textually, looking at the lines of text, compiling it yourself into your own executable, and then running it yourself, and then verifying that the nodes in the settings.conf, match what type of will you want to execute onto the network, settings such as what type of blocks will you accept, what's your maximum block size, what which other nodes will you communicate with? If you're a miner, which transactions you'll allow to transact. If you're not doing any of those things, in reality, as a person running a quote full node, you're just a slave to the default, and you're just a slave to whoever handed you those defaults. And so you must stay forever vigilant. You must either compile your own code and audit it yourself, or trust whoever did it for you, because double clicking an exe, it's not enough, right?
Sure. So my response on that, and I think there's some truth to what you're saying, certainly, but my response would be, we have a spectrum of technicality, let's say, or technical proficiency, right? So you've got people all on the other end of the spectrum who are straight
Bitcoin's
up, they
better.
can read every line of code.
It's better.
You know what I mean?
Bitcoin's better. We know how many coins they're printing. It's very likely you got a good source. It's easier to download a good source than a bad source. It is an improvement, right? But I want to speak very specifically, because a lot of people say things that are fraudulent and inaccurate and disgusting about what I believe is a very good technology. And because people think that will pump the price, they let them get away with it. And I find it disgusting. So for instance, there's a celebrity in the space that will go on television and say, if you don't believe in Bitcoin, you don't believe in cryptography. And I find that disgusting, because cryptography preceded Bitcoin, and Bitcoin stands on the back of cryptography and the back of open source databases, which it stores all of its data in. So Bitcoin is a database that stores all of its data in another database. And it was originally the Berkeley DB, and now it's the Level DB system. And without that system, there would be no Bitcoin, right? And we've borrowed the Qt GUI exe, which is also an open source project. And we used OpenSSL to verify transactions for a long time until, we had our own libsec 256p library. So I don't like the euphemisms, and I don't like the platitudes, and I like to speak very specifically about blockchains are good at and what they're not good at. And that makes a lot of people angry in the maximalist and often Austrian communities, because they want to live with blinders on. And it's weird, because this is a group of people that prides themselves on seeing past the curtain, right? So who's the Wizard of Oz, and who's really behind the curtain? And they think they found that guy, but in reality, they're just creating another curtain, which is, there's only one way to do trustless communication, and it's Bitcoin. And there's only one way to transfer value, and it's Bitcoin. And there's only one way to get rich in crypto, and it's Bitcoin. And everything else is a nightmare and horrible and disgusting, and it's 100% factually correct.
So a couple things there. I would say, so this comes back to what kind of maximalist are you, right? So there's the view of what I call monetary maximalism, and that's my friend Pierre Rochard who coined that term, but essentially it's around that idea of believing that it's saleability and liquidity that will inevitably drive people towards one best money, right? So that's the monetary maximalist view. Now, you might also contrast that with something like a platform maximalist view, this idea that, everything technologically must be built on Bitcoin, right? So my view would be more like monetary maximalism, not necessarily platform maximalism, right? So in that case, I wouldn't say, every messaging thing has to be built on Bitcoin. Well, no, I would say Bitcoin is the money, and other things will get built up on top of that. So that's my view.
Hey, it's an okay view. I used to have that view too, right? And then I decided I wanted more. So let's keep finding agreement, and while we're finding agreement, getting that nuance, because I think there's a lot of content there, right? Like if you and I agreed on everything, well, no one's learning everything. It's basically like a monologue with two people. So it's good that we find agreement and we find nuance, which is slight difference, right? So we both like peer-to-peer value transfer. We both like knowing what the actual supply of the currency is. We both like, knowing what the future total supply will be. We probably both like the inflation rate reducing over time, right? You like the inflation rate going down over time? Helps the price go up.
I think of that more like, no, I certainly don't want it to go up, right? I would just think of that more like, it was more like a number got chosen, and because that's now the number, everyone just agrees on that, right? Like that showing point idea. It doesn't matter that much about like what was the specific rate and how is it decreasing and so on. It was more just like this number came out, everyone agreed on it, and that's what we can agree on.
It wasn't even declared in the white paper. It wasn't even in the white paper. The halving
That's
every
right.
4 years was
Agreed.
not even in the white paper, nor was the 1
Yeah, no,
megabyte block limit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't doubt that. And I think it's, as Nick Szabo would talk, he would speak about your political argument surface, right? In the same way you might think of it like a axis, you can have a political.
You're gonna have
Too
to
many things that
you're gonna
people
have to
argue about.
you're gonna have to restate the legal attack surface again, because you chopped a bit the connection.
So he was speaking about this idea of how, similar to how we think of from a computer security point of view, about attack surface, and you want to minimize that attack surface, right? Just generally speaking, from a security point of view.
Yeah.
But then Nick Szabo was basically making an analogy, and he was saying, actually, you can think of this like political argument surface. We're minimizing the number of things that people could just kick up a stink about, and that's why this 21 million. And okay, the actual correct number is actually just a little bit less than that because of this, that, and the other. But
Sure.
broadly,
Yeah.
21 million.
Yep. I mean, I can tell you some coins that were permanently lost due to like a hard fork rollback back when 6 billion Bitcoin got printed. The transaction that printed those lost its reward of 50 BTC. So the actual supply is at least 50 BTC lower forever because of that.
Yep. And the one example where a miner only took less than the full amount that they were entitled to take. And there was another example where I think a miner screwed up the calculation. Yeah, I mean, there's little examples like this. So the actual number is
they're
like,
less than rounding
whatever,
errors.
21
It's
million,
almost irrelevant.
199,000, whatever,
Yeah.
just done. But I mean, essentially, the point is, it's 21 million, and that's what most people have agreed on. That's what people have opted into. That's what matters in the end.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
so
You're
here's the thing. Because blockchains are socially enforced networks. So let me give you an example of what I mean by being socially enforced. Bitcoin Cash has a longer blockchain than Bitcoin does. Why? Because they used an emergency difficulty retarget, which allowed the miners to game it, which allowed them to get more block rewards by showing that, you know, it needed to be down targeted down, and then mining a lot when the retarget down occurred. And so there's extra inflation in that system and a higher block height, even though they both forked from the same block. Now, in Bitcoin, it is stated that the authoritative, accurate, valid chain is the longest chain. Well, there's a new longest chain. And so then people had to go, oh, I guess we had it wrong. What we want is not actually the longest chain, but we want is the heaviest chain. And that means length times, energy that went into to create it, hash rate times length. And then it lands you back on the main chain again, right? Now, who do you socially believe in order to enforce that? You have to believe a developer that tells you, actually, this is the rule we're using now, and you have to look outside of the software and outside of the system to measure other weights of other chains to see if, in fact, those are the authoritative chains, right? And the same...
Sure. So my view is it's more like it's, as has been explained by other people like Nassim Taylor, this idea of shelling point, right? If you had to meet somebody in New York, you didn't know the time and the place, and in the book he talks about, he says 12 noon at Central, right? And so the point is, where do people go? And I totally accept your point that, yeah, there is a bit of a social layer of consensus around
shelling
that,
points are only easy when they're not... A shelling point is only easy to arrive at when there's not a wide range of conscious, reasonable choices. So if instead of Central Station being the most popular station, the division of popular stations were threefold, and there was, Central Stations A, B, and C, and they were in different locations, then you would arrive at like a 1/3 each person would decide that shelling point, right? So that shelling points are only effective when the tiebreakers are rather obviously broken. But in a Bitcoin's case, when you go to bitcoin.com and they're telling you the real Bitcoin is something else, and they're telling you that that's the real intention of the white paper, and they own the .com domain name, for a noob that doesn't know any better, I mean, that would sound pretty compelling, right? And then who are you going to go to for your shelling point? It's social consensus again. And I'll just finish this point.
Yeah, you finished.
Well, you know what? You finish that point, because this thing is like an almost different point. So go ahead.
Sure. So the way I would think about that is think of it more from an economic point of view. There are strong opportunity costs holding one money over another money, right? It's easy
Can I ask
to have
you?
Facebook
I
and
know
a
this
Twitter
is.
account.
I know this is a stupid question, but your internet connection kind of sucks. Is there any way to make your internet connection better?
I'm running VPN. I could turn it off.
You should turn that off, because the connection is unbearable. You just keep dropping out.
All right.
And your video is choppy. It's like super choppy. Like the video's